Okay, thanks, Mauro. Obrigado. So I'm Gerd Leonhardt. Bom dia. I've been to Brazil many times, to Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro and other places, many other places. So I'm quite envious that you guys are in Rio de Janeiro while I'm here in Zurich, playing boring Zurich, but you know, Zurich is a nice place too. So I have been speaking about the future for almost 20 years, probably a little bit longer. And I run a company that is busy around the world trying to help governments, businesses, people to understand the future and to prepare for the future. And I want to start by saying that there's no such thing as predicting the future. You know, a futurist does not predict the future. A futurist observes the future and pays attention to the future. And because that's all I do, sometimes I'm able to pick up more information, more details, more intuition about the future than most people who are running regular businesses. So my approach is I zoom forward into the future 5, 8, or 10 years, not much further, and I try to understand what is likely to happen. And then I come back to today and I share what I found in the future. I used to be a record producer and musician, and then I went on the internet in the 90s and I told the record companies in late 99 that music was moving to the cloud, you know, mobile phone where you click and you play music. And of course they hated the idea because they couldn't control it, they thought. But nevertheless, it took 20 years to happen, but it finally did happen with the launch of Spotify roughly 15 years or so later. So anyway, so what's really important in regards to human resources and what we do as people is to develop a future mindset. And I'll talk about that a little bit in my presentation, and we'll take some questions, because now the future is no longer about tomorrow, the future is already here. And the other thing that's really important is that when we look at the future right now, the future has a bad reputation. Now, most people think of the future as lousy, you know, the red part of the globe. Especially in Europe, you know, I think it's much better in Brazil for some reason. People are more optimistic. Despite of all the challenges of Brazil, people are generally optimistic about the future. You know, it has been said many times in the past that Brazil is the country of the future. And then the other day I met somebody who said, Brazil is the country of the future, but it never arrives. And you know, maybe that changes now, I don't know. But anyway, we have to think differently about the future. We can't go into the future and think of it as being bad, and think of all of the bad things that are happening. And I'll explain why that's important. Also in human resources, that we have to prepare for good things and not just look at the bad things all the time. So most importantly, what is happening today is that our mindset contains our future. Our mindset is how we think about things, our assumptions. This is like in a relationship, you know, when you're thinking about your wife or your husband as having problems with something, and you kind of set it like this, and then nothing can happen. So you have to sometimes just think a little bit wider and think about the possibilities that are good, that are positive about the future. It's quite clear that if your mindset is negative and you're expecting bad things and you don't have faith in the future, you don't trust the future can be good, then you're also creating a future that will not be positive. And this is the number one thing for human resources. You got to look for people that have a positive mindset, that have an optimist mindset. Yeah, I can hear everything is good? Oh, good, okay. Just give me a thumbs up so I know everything is going. So the mindset, right, the positive mindset, because the future belongs to optimists. Right? It doesn't belong to pessimists. And very important quote here from Barbara Hubbard, famous futurist who died 2 years ago, rest in peace. She said, as we see the future, so we act. As we act, so we become. Right? It's called self-fulfilling prophecy, of course. And in business, we have to see the future clearly all the time, because the future is happening so fast now. We have never been in an era of time like we are today, where things are happening literally every week. Like what's just happened with artificial intelligence and ChatGPT and intelligent machines and automation. This will impact Brazil maybe a little bit slower because there's less internet connection absolutely everywhere. That's coming fast though, but it will hit like a hammer. Because, you know, many things will become possible that were literally science fiction before. It's important to remember this. And so when I speak about the future, I speak a lot about the good future, il boa futura or bom futura, and I think it's boa, right, in Portuguese. But I made a film about this called The Good Future. And you can watch it also with Portuguese subtitles, Brazilian Portuguese subtitles, at thegoodfuturefilm.com. And the key message is in this film is that the future is better than we think. You know, we tend to look at the Ukraine-Russia war, we look at climate change, we look at robots, and we look at criminality, and we look at inequality, and then it all seems bad. But sometimes we don't see the progress that we have actually made and the possibilities of progress. And I have very high hopes now for Brazil, the new Brazil, to create a better future as well. I think it's time for that, and I'm very optimistic about that happening. So when I look at the future, I look at this, right? I look at the optimism part, I look at the good part, the exciting part, and I have termed this definition, what I call the good future, of being four different things. You know, rather than the past, which was mostly about growth and profit, it was about four things, right? People, planet, purpose, and prosperity. And that's kind of become my trademark, and I speak to that to governments a lot. And I think in many ways it's kind of like what is happening in Brazil now with a new agenda of people, planet, purpose, and prosperity, not just prosperity. And this is where leadership comes in. If you're going to be a leader in people, planet, purpose, and prosperity, that is going to be a hell of a job, right? Because the job is four pieces. It's not just one piece, you know, to create more money, to create more shareholder economy, to create a new price, a better margin, right? It's about being a leader in four different things: understanding people, understanding the environment and the planet, understanding purpose, which is the question of why we're doing things, and putting it all together in a prosperity package where you can also make money, right? This is, of course, the ultimate challenge of those four things. So Kevin Kelly, who's a futurist that started Wired magazine, he said we should be optimistic not because our problems are smaller than we thought, but our capacity to solve them is larger. So my argument here is really saying what is happening is not that we have less problems, but we have the power to solve almost every one of them. And technological advances are, of course, fueling all of these things. But technology alone is not enough. You know, the best technology can be used for very bad things. And so we need good policy and wisdom. And this is what human resources needs to focus on, the human skills. So taking a look at all the things that are happening, right? All these advances in technology, climate change, we're looking roughly at the next $100 billion companies, especially in Brazil, will be in climate technology. The World Economic Forum says 100 million new jobs in climate technology. And this is a huge growth area for Brazil in every possible way: solar energy, electric cars, precision agriculture, battery storage. I mean, this is a chart from, I think, from Forrester or Gardner, but you can download the slides later. I'll make them available. Energy transition investments. Everybody's investing in the future of energy, clean energy. Anywhere from renewable energy to even nuclear, right? Next generation nuclear energy, electric vehicles, energy storage. This is also very much happening in Brazil. That bodes really well for the future, but we need also the skills to understand this. And this is the number one curve we have to understand. This is the exponential curve, right? Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, Wright's law. You heard about Moore's law, I'm sure. Basically, we're leaping into the future. The future is no longer just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, no, it's 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. It's just leaping like crazy. So we are here now. And believe me when I say that Brazil may be a little bit behind the curve in speed on this curve, but when it hits, it's going to be even faster. All of the kind of semi-developed countries around the world, they're leaping onto the curve on the future even faster than we are in Europe, because in Europe we are kind of saturated too, right? So one thing to remember right from the beginning, the next 10 years bring more change than the previous 100 years. And this is why human resources and having the right people and training people and learning and development is so important, because we're going to leap. In 10 years, we're going to have 10G internet. We're going to have robots at every turn doing the work for us, including intelligent machines, computing, and so on. We're going to have things that were unheard of, like nanotechnology that allows me to replace my dental implant, you know, with a bot, or my kneecap, or, you know, all of those things that were basically science fiction. becoming real. I'll show you some examples shortly. But what it means is this: business as usual is dead or dying. That's good news. That's not bad news. Business as usual was pollution, inequality, poverty, bad policy, especially the last 5 years in so many different ways. And this is all ending now, because now we have the technical ability to do this and political will maybe as well, but business as usual is over. And that means also human resources as we know it is over, because we want different kind of people. We don't just want people who can perform and be efficient. We want people who are creative, who are thinking about the future, who have the future mindset. Because this is the situation now, right? This is a very complex super puzzle. The puzzle is two big things: climate change and energy and artificial intelligence, thinking machines. Those things are extremely positive and extremely difficult, both, because they have solutions that allow us to change everything, and then they have big challenges, like in climate change. We're going to suffer for at least a decade until we can fix this problem. And we have to deal with that. Mitigation, adaptation, and a lot of money will shift. So we need different kinds of people for that. So thought leadership is existential. Right? Human resources must take the lead in thought leadership. Thought leadership means that you understand what's coming, you've thought about what possibilities are, you can lead others to the same possibilities, and every company needs thought leaders. They don't have to be the CEO or the CMO, they can be anybody in the company. And the more thought leaders they have, the better. You know, if you just think 5 years ago, you know, a lot of companies were quite happy with having people who are functional and doing a good job and being good managers. That's over since COVID. Since COVID, we want people to be what? Resilient, agile, creative, inventive. And this means we're going to resort a lot more to younger people for this, to women, which are popping up all over the world as the leaders in this change, right? And of course, to diversity. And this is part of because diversity leads to more agile environment. And this is going to be the crucial thing for Brazil, right? To take the thought leadership also in the region, but economically speaking. So here we have this big shift on what I call the three revolutions, right? The first one is the digital revolution, which we all know is everywhere. But the second one is 100 times as big. That is the green revolution, the sustainable revolution, where everything is about being sustainable. And the last one is the purpose revolution, where people are asking the question, why are we doing this? What is the purpose of this technology? What is the purpose of this government? What do we stand for? Right? People, planet, purpose, and prosperity. If that's the purpose, we're going to have to change a lot of things, including our stock market. And this is already undergoing, where a lot of stock markets around the world are saying, we would like to switch to a stakeholder economy. You know, the things that are important, not just one thing. In 1968, Bobby Kennedy said that GDP, gross domestic product, measures everything except that which makes our lives worthwhile. In other words, money is important, but it doesn't measure everything. There's a bit more than that. And now what's happening is that you can safely say the millennials, the Gen Y, many of you might be in that age, between say 25 to 45 even, they're taken over. They're taken over from my generation, the baby boomers, the Gen X. They're getting the money from their parents to go into business. And especially in South America, there's lots of young people. And they are taken over with a new agenda. And we're seeing this happening with women going into government, with different agendas. And their agenda of those people, the millennials, the Gen Y, is completely different than our agenda was when I was in business, or when I am in business, right? It's completely different in the sense of saying, we want different things. We want to take a global view. We're global citizens. And those three things are going to change absolutely everything: digital, sustainable, and purpose. And sustainable is 100x of digital, and purpose is 100x of sustainable. Right? So this is the big discussion. This is all going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. Huge opportunities, and that requires totally different leadership. Right? That leadership that we need here is going to have to be ready for the future. And how do we do that? Well, we study the future. Right? We look at what is likely to happen. And when I talk about the future, I'm not talking about Netflix or Black Mirror, as much as I like Black Mirror, or watching stuff. I'm talking about reading. Reading the good books, Being informed. 1 hour per day is all I ask. This is what Bill Gates is saying as well. Thank you, Bill. He says a 5-hour rule, 5 hours a week will save your job in the future because you'll be ready. Those are the kind of people we want to hire, and those are the people we want to be in the company, the ones that are future ready, that understand what's coming, that have this kind of leadership. Right? So very important here that we understand the future could be heaven or hell. It could be fantastic to have technology solve all our problems, but we don't want technology to run the world. We don't want artificial intelligence to tell us what to do. We don't want to lose our freedom. We don't want to lose our privacy just because we have smart machines. So that's going to take a lot of juggling. You know, it could be heaven or it could be hell. And if we want it to be heaven, then we have to do something for it. Because technology by itself has no intent of solving any social problem, any poverty issue, anything else. Technology is just basically a giant tool, and it will do whatever we tell it to do. So if you ask technology like AI to solve climate change, it would eliminate all humans. That is the most logical answer, right? That's a little bit inconvenient for us, so we have to think about our policy, our ethics, right? Very important. And this is what's happening right now, is that humans and machines are starting to converge with artificial intelligence. And machines that can think, parenthesis, deep learning, machine learning, machines that can do our jobs if they are routines, like financial checking, analysis, and filing, and I'll show you a chart of that in a second. But what we have right now is this convergence. This starts, for example, with machines understanding language, which is, you know, a little bit difficult in all the dialects and different versions of Portuguese and Brazilian. But it will happen very soon that you can speak to a machine and you don't have to use a mobile phone. You can use your wristwatch, or you can speak to the wall in the mirror and you can say, hey, you know, show me the best offering for these shoes that I want to buy. Or it will do all that stuff flawlessly. So basically all of us will have a genie in the pocket, even if you're poor. And that, of course, is another angle. You know, this technology is, you know, iPhones are still very expensive, but the technology inside of all these is becoming widely available. So imagine what that will do for society when even an average laborer that, you know, makes $10 a day or so can speak to a machine and ask questions. You know, who's going to make sure that the answer is correct? And, you know, how do we understand this, like with virtual reality, what's going to happen with the metaverse and all these kind of ideas, right? But here's the thing we have to think about. Artificial intelligence is defined by Demis Hassabis from DeepMind as turning data and information into knowledge. If machines have knowledge, what do we have? Aren't we the ones with the knowledge? Isn't that your job, right, in HR, to provide knowledge and to get knowledge to grow? And the answer is, of course, you know, that machines have knowledge, but it's machine knowledge. It's binary knowledge. It's simple knowledge. A machine can tell you, memorize all of Wikipedia in 1 minute, but it can still not tell you about philosophy because it doesn't understand why that's important. And it doesn't understand what it means to be a philosopher, for example, but it can read all the texts. It's basically an autocomplete, you know, a fancy parrot, you could say, in many ways. But anyway, so this is what's happening with AI, and you can see here on this chart, this should be really interesting for you guys in HR. You know, the green line shows that basically, if you have AI assistants of smart machines, intelligent computers, then your knowledge can grow much faster. It's a power tool. So I can ask questions, I can become quicker, I can learn faster. That's going to be amazing, but of course now we have to understand what that information is. And, you know, Picasso once said that machines are for answers, humans are for questions. We have to stay critical. We should stay in the loop. We should not let machines make decisions by themselves. We should not just say, okay, then this is the real world. It's not. Machines don't understand the real world. They don't have eyes and ears. They only have mechanical ears and eyes, right? But they're not like humans. They understand 3 to 5% of reality, really. This chart is even better or worse, depending how you look at it. But we can clearly see that if you're a paralegal or office support or admin or even a lawyer, bookkeeper, your efficiency will go through the roof by using artificial intelligence. Some people say 4 to 5 times as much, for example, for a paralegal in an office or a bookkeeper or an accountant when you use artificial intelligence. Now, some people are saying basically that means that GDP, gross domestic product, or GNP, I think it's in Brazil, can be increased to maybe 5 to 10x of today using artificial intelligence. That would be amazing, but of course the main thing is that that has to be the benefit for everybody, not just for the top 5%. And this is, of course, a policy question. So anyway, this means that all of a sudden we're going to be much more efficient. Maybe we can work less finally, or maybe we don't need as many people, which could be a drawback for automation and for hiring, of course. Right? But basically, the learning from this is most of this stuff is not about fancy like ex machina type machines or so. It's about intelligent assistance. I call it IA. And this is something to remember from this talk. You know, when we're talking about the future of what machines can do, it's intelligent assistance. It's the machines that are no longer stupid. So they can find information, they can sort things. They're not thinking like humans. And this is why we shouldn't fear them. You know, we're going to need rules and regulations regardless because of all the other things. But basically, it's AI-enabled knowledge workers. And don't make a mistake about this. When you're talking about machine intelligence, we're not talking about the people on the field or in the factory. They are automated already. We're talking about knowledge work, our work. That is fundamentally changing. And we have to use that to create new spaces so that we can do what humans do. And what do humans do? Well, intuition, imagination, emotions, understanding, creativity, storytelling, you know, things that machines can't do for quite some time. So this is really where that discussion comes in about how we can make the world happen. So basically, I went to ChatGPT in preparing for this talk, and I asked ChatGPT about giving me an answer on this. You see in the lower corner, how much impact will AI have on human resources in Brazil? And if you use ChatGPT Pro, you can go on the web and find stuff for you, and gave me a pretty interesting answer, okay? There's a predictive answer based on existing trends in 2021. So recruitment and hiring, AIs can streamline the recruitment process, automatically scan things, training and development. But of course, you know, remember this is a system speaking about itself, so it would be largely positive, right? But all of these things we have to take with a grain of salt and say, yeah, it can help me do recruitment, but I still have to make my own decisions. You know? It can automate routine tasks. It can bias mitigation. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that. I think that machines have huge amount of bias. Ask a follow-up question about the future of Brazil here. You can see here, I'm just coming up here shortly. What is Brazil? What's the future of Brazil? And it talks about Bolsonaro and of course all the stuff that's happening with Lula and so on. But it says, interestingly enough, Brazil faces ongoing challenges beyond the political sphere and so on. So it can give you some really interesting questions. I think some of that stuff you could look up for yourself. So bring it back to the bottom line of what's happening. You know, machines are essentially going to replace routine. And a lot of work that we do is routine. So my work is maybe 30–40% routine. If you work in a factory, it's 90%. If you work as a driver, it's maybe 80%. But that routine will be replaced by smart machines. If your work is 95% routine, like a call center, maybe, you are in trouble. That's not surprising, right? But still, there's 5% that machines can't do for some time. So our jobs will grow into new jobs, and especially jobs that are not very high paid, like, for example, filing clerks or researching legal things. So those jobs will be done by machine, and then we can move up to do other things. That will also be a challenge to create new jobs based on this, right? So here's a great example from this real estate site. It's called, what's it called, Zippos? No, it's called, come to that in a second. Anyway, this real estate site is able, Zillow it's called, yeah. It's able to find a place for you instantly based on your query using artificial intelligence if you're going to move somewhere to find a house or so. It can do that now automatically. This app from Expedia is able to put together a plan for you for your next trip to Hawaii, if you were so lucky to put together a portfolio for you on the fly. Imagine if you can do that, for example, for a client by saying, I make a financial portfolio for you using an app like this. The client is still going to need help. He's not just going to buy what's on the app, right? But it's kind of an interesting way of facilitating knowledge. So it's really powerful stuff. I like this kind of stuff the best for artificial intelligence. I told it to make me look better and more adventurous, and it made this photo. So it does really funny things as well. But here's a chart you should take a look at. What does AI mean for the future of human work? Well, basically what's happening here is that machines will make everything faster and more efficient. They will not replace humans unless we become lazy. Right? Bottom line is nuts and bolts, more efficiency, customer experience, employee productivity, increased innovation. They are tools, they are not purpose. Right? So we're going to have to use those power tools to get used to them. And then we have to develop our own work, which is basically the human-only work, the things that only we can do. You can see in this chart here from Accenture, I think it is, what's happening is that the jobs that are kind of on the lower part of this, wholesale, retail, construction, transportation, they're going to shrink. I think that's very true for Brazil, and the other ones are going to grow. Healthcare, scientific, communications. You know, that's a general trend that we see around the world, and that will require a lot of government wisdom to organize this and to help people. So again, machines are for answers, humans are for questions. Ask the right questions, think about the future, put together your future skills. When you're hiring people, that's what you're looking for. You may not even be looking for degrees and stuff anymore in 5 years, not in the same way. You may be looking for people who can ask good questions. So this is a different, the curve of the future work pyramid. We're going to move up this pyramid essentially by saying, okay, the lower part of this is kind of machine turf, right? Intellectual knowledge, data, and information. Machines can do that, and they're on the way to doing that pretty well. But this turf up here, that's human only. Right? So purpose, wisdom, consciousness, spirituality, of course, tacit knowledge, deeper knowledge. That's stuff that we do. It's almost impossible. I wouldn't say impossible, but pretty close to impossible for machines to do that anytime soon. And that is what we're looking for in companies. We're looking for more understanding, more wisdom, more purpose. We're not looking necessarily for the smartest person, but the most human person. And I think that is going to make a vast difference in human resources. The bottom line on this is, and I think this is brutal, but it's the truth, you work like a robot will take your job. You don't want to work like a robot, you don't want to teach your kids to work like a robot. And if you learn like a robot in university or school, you'll never have a job. Because there's just no way you're going to compete with robots in the future. They know how to do those robotic things much better and much faster than we do. So we also have to let go of this obsession with efficiency. The future of work, the future of what we do isn't going to be about efficiency. That's just something that is also important. It's going to be to go beyond this. And I always say it's the idea of going from KPIs to KHIs, Key Human Index. We want better humans, not faster machines, to work for us. Human agency, consciousness, imagination, intuition, empowerment, and entrepreneurship, and courage. We're going to need a lot of that because, you know, the speed is just going crazy. So let's not zero in too much on this kind of hyper efficiency. Great quote here from the Indian philosopher C.K. Prahalad. Imagine the future may be more important than analyzing the past. Companies today are no longer resource bound, they are imagination bound. And when I speak about imagination in Brazil, I always talk about Jay Genio, right? Or Jay Genio, one of those two. You know what I'm trying to say. But the ability to make stuff up, right? To have imagination, this is going to be crucial in a positive way in so many different jobs that we have. So let me wrap up and say, what do we do now? Well, first, you know, Brazil has a high belief in artificial intelligence. You see the star here? That is basically the question, do products and services with AI have more benefits than drawbacks? And Brazil ranks pretty highly here. Over 50% of Brazilians allegedly think that AI has more benefit than drawbacks, which is pretty high in the global turf. It's along with the other countries that are in the southern part. As you can see here, the developed countries have much more likelihood to say no. That's probably because we're not hungry enough to actually appreciate this. But that's very important. When we look at artificial intelligence, let's not get confused. Right? These are not humans that are acting like machines. They don't think like humans. They're not conscious. They are none of that. This is what they are, right? They're a box with cables. And that can be extremely useful, but let's not confuse what they can do and what we can do. And let's be careful also what we give them and that we keep the human in the loop, right? Very important. This is the question you got to ask. Why am I doing this? Why is it good? Who does it help? The why question is a lot more important than the what question in the end. So this is what you need for the future mindset. You got to get some ears. And these ears are essentially all about understanding what's coming, what's next, to observe the future, right? And these points, right, this guy from Salesforce, the CEO, Mark Benioff, says, we need to get to the future ahead of our customers and be ready to greet them when they arrive. Not run after them when they are already in the future. That is the quickest way you lose your business and your customer. Very important here, the future mindset, that's those things, right? Foresight, questions, imagination. And that's what you want to install in your employees. You want them to have intuition, resilience, optimism. And that's the people you want to hire. And that's the people you want to train at school, of course. So as we're going into this future, this kind of future tunnel here into the digital future, that's going to be crucial. Observation, right? Imagination. Imagination is more important than knowledge. That's what Einstein said, right? Understanding, and finally, foresight. You want those four things, and you can practice them every single day for yourself by studying the future and putting those four things into place about an hour a day. Most importantly, in the end, I want to say that the door isn't closing. People think that the door may be closing on humanity. I think that's the opposite. The doors are opening, right? The doors are widely opening, and that can be also very painful as we're going through this reality of VUCA, uncertainty, complexity. We have to learn how to flip the VUCA. Turn it around into velocity, speed, unorthodoxy, co-creation, and awesomeness. This is what we want our employees to have. Co-creation, unorthodoxy. That's the kind of people we're looking for to flip the VUCA here. And so I want to wrap up by showing this picture here of the bird swarm, right? Let's keep in mind, it's success in every business and every country is about culture. Culture eats technology for breakfast. Technology is tools. We're going to use the tools. We're going to get better with them. That's very important. You don't have tools, you're in trouble. But let's keep that in mind. We have to invest as much in humanity as we invest in technology. That's the key to the future, and that is the key to human resources. So I want to thank you very much. Obrigado pelo seu tempo e atenção. Well, something like that. So thanks very much for tuning in, and now let's take some questions. Okay. You know, today I think short-term is already long-term by definition, because we used to think of the future 10 years from now, but now we think of the future as 10 days from now. It's moving so fast that you can't afford to not look at the future now. It's become part of every operating paradigm. And I think long-term thinking is difficult, but we have to practice it. This is just like saying you're going to take care of your body or have a good diet, you know. It's like you think longer than 1 year, and those are the companies who are surviving. And it's quite clear if you're looking at today, for example, if you're not going to be circular and sustainable by 2030, people will hate you, they will not buy from you, and they will not be your customers, and you'll be dead. And that's as simple as that. And so looking at this makes us realize that we have to think a little bit further than the immediate action. And I think this is so crucial. So the time frame, I think, for most companies, you can expect 3 to 5 years is a good time frame to look at. And that is already quite a bit of work. Again, like I said, 1 hour per day spent in the future to analyze and to understand is part of your job. It's not an extra job. And whoever does that wins. Well, okay, there is no simple answer for inequality. The best answer for inequality, especially in Brazil, is to harmonize the income so that the benefit of technology and the benefit of growth is distributed to everybody. And that includes, of course, the benefit of the green economy and the investment that's required. And when we do that, then we can slowly lift up people from the lower part into the middle part, and then we can have a better society that's more equal. But this is, of course, a lot easier said than done. Brazil was in a pretty good way in that regard until 5-6 years ago, and then equality came back, of course, also with COVID. And now there's a bit of a reset. So it's a very tall order, but we cannot look towards technology for fixing inequality. You know, equality and the quality of life, the collective benefit, is a question of policy. And technology will help with that policy, but we can have the right technology and the wrong policy, and it will still not create anything good. So this is important to realize that technology sometimes makes inequality worse, like we have seen in social media. So we need the right sense to put into this, the right measurement. For example, I know that Brazil is pushing very hard to put climate change mitigation adaptation into the front of everything. I think that's the right path, but it will no doubt require a lot of courage. Mm-hmm. Well, okay, the way I look at it is that if big companies use more automation and more artificial intelligence to automate work, then part of that benefit should be put into an instrument of making it easier for the other ones to learn and for preparing for the shift, for training. Right? And we need to expand people's mindsets so that they can say, yes, I can use this technology and I can create new values at work. For example, if you have a checkout in a supermarket, and now the checkout is being done with a machine, with a scanner, and people lose their job, maybe we can create new jobs in the supermarket by creating a health food department or making online recipes or making YouTube videos for the store. We can use the same people maybe. And that's happening here in Europe. And I think the government needs to say, well, if a big telecom company would automate 30% of work because of AI, then maybe we should have an automation tax to create new jobs that we feed from this money. Right? And so this is very much a social thing, but also very important to realize that we give hope to people whose jobs are changing by providing new options. I mean, for example, just a simple example, we have 21 million people now working in social media. These jobs did not exist 12, 15 years ago. And many of them are completely new people. They don't even have, you don't have a degree in social media or a PhD in social media. Maybe some people do now, but you invent your job. And it's very important that we talk to kids and younger people about saying, your job will be to invent your future. You're not going to do the same than your father and stay in the same job. You have to invent it. You have to do lifelong learning. So the other thing we need from the government and from the cities is to provide lifelong training. So you train people in technology, you train people in human skills, you have more training to allow them to discover new possibilities. And lastly, I think we need to understand that many of the new jobs will not be physical, they will be digital. And so people in Rio de Janeiro or in Parachi or wherever they are, they could end up working in Nashville, USA. That's already happening, but we need to make those qualifications. And for the lower part of the pyramid, which is huge in Brazil, I think there's still about 30 million people in poverty in Brazil, right? How do we harmonize that for them? How do we give them access to those tools? How do we show them how to use them? And how do we bring out the creativity? And this is really important that we show people that, yes, they can change and they can discover new things. Everybody has the inherent capability to learn, and that we bring this back out. So it's a big job, but I see positive things here if we make the right switches now. Yeah. Well, you can't create a culture. You know, it's like, no, we can't do that. We can change culture by having different priorities. So you change your company culture by creating a movement, a momentum as to the things that matter for you. And your executive leadership changes the culture by shifting the objective. And this is the most important thing. Well, when we shift the objective away from just profit and growth to a larger thing, then all of a sudden companies become more diverse, like Unilever did, or like Vodafone did, or like, of course, Patagonia, right, which is a very unique company. And this is what happens when you shift culture. So in Germany, for example, I worked for a while with Mercedes-Benz, and you could see a very big culture shift from this traditional centrally controlled entity to that were run by engineers. Now Mercedes-Benz is becoming a global technology company with young people, with diverse people, with more women. That is because the culture shift was started, right? When you change a culture, that's important. Yeah, my final word would be, like I said in the beginning, the future is better than we think. Let's keep that in mind. When we have a positive view of the future, we can create a positive future. Despite of all the current problems, we are not optimistic because we have less problems. We're optimistic because we have more power to solve them. Thanks very much. Muito obrigado. Thank you. Thank you. Até logo.